What's up, real estate agents? Be ready to get schooled. In this episode, we are sitting down with Adam Scalena from Vancouver, who's the host of Canada's #1 real estate podcast. He has built a business in the most creative way I've ever seen. So today, we are going to dive deep into not only how he built this podcast, but also how he's built a brand and a community that's going to stand the test of time, and the creative avenues he's created in order to build a scalable real estate business that is thriving and growing like no other. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce Adam Scalena. So grab a notebook, get a coffee, sit down, because you're going to enjoy this one. You're going to want to take notes, and I guarantee you're going to take something from it. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of From Zero. And as mentioned in the introduction, we've got a superstar here in the podcast world. So, I'm really excited because, as you guys know, this is going to eventually transition to the podcast. But today we've got on the host and founder of Canada's #1 podcast on the Vancouver Real Estate Podcast. So Adam Scalena, what's up, man? Welcome to the show.
How you doing, Mike? Thanks a lot for having me. Really appreciate being on, and I'm a fan, so excited.
Definitely, guys. Yeah, I know, I'm really excited because you guys have sort of mastered what we're, achieving here and slowly growing, but you've done it in a really neat way, and we'll get into that. And you're also approaching real estate as an agent in a really creative way. So I'm excited to get into some, the ways you're generating business that's very much on the innovative side of things. And, you're taking an approach that I think is going to stand the test of time, unlike the old school methods that many are preaching right now. So this is going to be a conversation that a lot of realtors are going to want to listen deep on and take notes, because you guys are expanding in a really creative space, and I'm excited to dive into, how you're doing that and what's to come in the future. So yeah, man, you guys are doing some cool stuff, and I'm excited to hear what's vibrant out there in Vancouver.
Well, yeah, looking forward to chatting. I mean, I love what you're doing here as well, and I think it's such a great way for people to just learn from entrepreneurs that are actually accessible, right? And it's a great thing what you're doing. So looking forward to our chat.
Definitely, man. So yeah, kind of like we do for most people, why don't we start from the beginning and maybe go through first how you got into real estate as an agent, and then after the agent, before getting too deep in there, we'll talk about, why you decided to start the Vancouver Real Estate Podcast.
Sounds good. So I moved to Vancouver in 2006, and I came out here actually to do my master's in economic history at UBC. So I was not really focused on business. I was not focused on real estate. And I was kind of a career student at that point. I was, really interested in learning. I had been a bad student in junior high and high school. I was never a great student. I did some traveling after high school and met some really interesting people, learned to kind of really appreciate culture and kind of world issues. And by the time I hit university, I was excited to learn. And my life in university was great. And I came out of university and I got my first research job, and everything changed. Basically, I was in a job that could only be described as soul crushing, long hours, in front of a computer. I didn't get to, I didn't get to deal with a lot of people. I was very social throughout most of my previous jobs. I was always in promotions and sales. And I just found myself behind a computer for 8 hours a day, no creativity, no carrot really. Didn't matter basically how hard I worked. There was a bit of a ceiling in terms of development and advancement. And I started thinking about different career options. And at the time, I was dating a girl that her father was heavily involved in real estate investing. And he was actually out in Victoria converting old mansions to multifamily properties. And he had about 50 doors or so. The guy actually retired when he was about 37 years old. So, we'd go visit her parents, and he was basically in his pajamas all day, and like he was, he could do whatever he wanted to with his time. And he really liked to talk about real estate. So that was like my aha moment about passive income and the potential of kind of, just basically developing a portfolio in real estate and having control. And it just kind of, the two things met. I wasn't happy in my career at that time. I was developing a strong interest in real estate, and I decided to go get licensed, and the rest is history. So best decision I ever made, by the way. This industry is phenomenal. So
Yeah, man,
yeah,
that's exciting to hear, because we kind of come from similar backgrounds in the sense that I started in engineering, and, I kind of realized that being stuck with the salary cap and being around that corporate structure where you're limited in the sense of growth because you have to adhere to their criteria and things like that, it didn't give you the opportunity to, be creative and get compensated based on your efforts. Because if you were that driven hustler, it didn't matter if you worked 15 hours or 10 hours, you were getting paid $70K a year, or whatever it might be. And similar,
right.
as, a kind of future pacing here, but as we'll get into later, you evidently have a really creative side to you in terms of how you generate business. So being in that corporate world, you don't often get to leverage your creativity because you're stuck, under different people, and what they say goes, and you kind of just put the head down, nose to the grind. So I can definitely understand why that wasn't likely a good fit.
Well, it's funny, and I mean, this is one reason I really love being in real estate. Is we're doing a seminar next week, and we had a pamphlet that we're kind of an email that we're distributing to promote the event, and the guy that we're doing with at TD Bank that we're doing the seminar with, he had to run it through like 9 different channels. It took us like 3 weeks to get this thing approved, right? So we could actually email it out. And as you know from the real estate industry, I mean, you put your brokerage logo on, and as long as you're not doing anything too silly, you're good to go. So for creative people that, want to build something, especially with content generation, it's the perfect industry. So
Definitely, man. No, that's cool to see how you transition there. And, we'll take a step back after and go into some of the creative stuff you're doing in the real estate space, but we'll talk about podcasts for a second, because, you guys are doing very well, and maybe you'll talk about figures and, things like that. But, what motivated you to start a podcast, which is now, grown to the point of being Canada's #1 real estate podcast?
So, it was interesting. I mean, I've been in real estate for 8 years now. And we realized really early on that education-based marketing was kind of the direction that we wanted to head. We wanted to get in front of people. We wanted to, help people learn about real estate. We were really excited about real estate, obviously. And we wanted to build that connection online, build that trust online. And we were actually already building sites. My brother and I, who I co-host the podcast with, we were also big fans of podcasts. I mean, there's 2 things. I listen to Audible and I listen to podcasts, and that's kind of whenever I'm driving or going anywhere, I take so much away from them. So we were big fans, and it actually came out of my brother Matt was searching for podcasts on real estate in Vancouver, and there was nothing. And we were just so surprised. This is 3 or 4 years ago. We were just so surprised that nobody was doing anything, because in Vancouver people talk about 3 things: the Canucks, the weather, and real estate, right? And the Canucks have not been doing that well, so it's mostly just real estate in the rain. So I thought, well, man, this is a crazy gap. Nobody's doing this. And now, sure enough, I mean, there's 15, 20 podcasts on Vancouver real estate, but we just saw this huge opportunity to get in there and kind of be a first to market and offer some real value. And so we went for it. And what happened, actually, it was interesting, because we basically just recorded a conversation. We were having a beer and talking about why Vancouver is a good place to invest. It was not good at all. I mean, you can go back, it's episode 1, but not a great episode at all. And we finished recording. I uploaded it to iTunes, and a few days later I looked, and we were top new and noteworthy. And a few days later we were in the top 10 of iTunes business charts, and it was crazy. So then it was like this moment of sheer panic where we are first to market. We have to now hit the ground running, and we have to maintain this position, because there are going to be people coming into this space for sure. So,
of course.
yeah.
That's crazy, man. I love the fact that you described just having a beer and having a chat. Something that I think a lot of people struggle with, whether it be real estate or entrepreneurship in general, is the notion of just getting started.
Right.
Regardless of what it is so many people have ideas, but ideas nothing until you execute. And people wait until in their mind they have this perfect thing where they have the $3,000 equipment, and they have, I have friends in this city right now who are starting podcasts, and they've done like 5 episodes in a year and have released 0 because they want the dual cameras, they want the professional equipment, they want someone to edit it, they want it to be spotless, but they don't understand that, we're racking up views like crazy here just by getting started and using the tools that you have for the time being, because that's also a good way, as you've seen, is, that helped vet the market for you. As you saw, you weren't expecting for it to start ranking right away, but at least that was proof of concept by you just sitting down and doing something that others were probably thinking about, but they weren't executing.
And you're exactly right. I mean, you have to create those opportunities and you have to act. And I mean, I don't know how many projects where I've kind of waited for perfection that I've just ended up leaving on the table and not doing, right. And I mean, you just got to start, and when it hits, then you got to sprint, and then you have to make it amazing. But the one thing I will say is we did have professional mics when we launched, and for the audio on podcasts, I find like a lot of people starting out, if the audio is not decent, like with a multi-directional mic, especially if don't have the video component, it might not hit as hard. So we did have decent mics, but you're absolutely right. Like, I mean, we just went with it and kind of learned as we went, and I'm glad we launched when we did, for sure. So.
Definitely. Yeah. You guys were kind of in that sweet spot as things were getting going in the podcast world. And, even, on the note of professional equipment, like we were talking about off camera, is the fact that, there are options right now to go out on Amazon and buy a professional camera that plugs into your computer for $150. So
Totally.
You don't need to dive deep and, spend your life savings on stuff just to get started. There's avenues where you can be professional enough. So, you guys, that's exciting to hear that, you started ranking, and, how did they get to the point it is now? Because now you guys have thousands of people following, and you're talking on topics that are now converting into business and having people come to you. So now it's in a really exciting phase after that growth spurt.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're a real estate agent, you're in the business of lead generation, right? So that was kind of part of it. Was we've been trying to grow it to the point that it's that we get a business from it. That's at the end goal. We want to work with people. We want to help people buy and sell real estate and build wealth through real estate. So we started off by basically, we knew we needed a site, so we built a really good site. And we knew we needed calls to action, so we started creating resources on that site that we could direct people to. And then it was just delivering on good content. So I mean, reaching out to people. The one thing that's just blowing my mind about this podcast is people want to help, and people will talk to you if you reach out to them. They want to be involved. They want to be a part of things, right? So I mean, it's opened up so many doors in that regard, where we just started asking people to be on the show, people that we admired, people that we wanted to talk to, people that we knew that we could learn from. And that was basically how it started. We just started crafting emails, putting together a list of people that we wanted to have on the program, following up aggressively until we were able to set up a time to get them on. And then everything that follows after that. So the marketing component, the online, and just strategizing in a way where we can get people to get in touch and actually build a community around it. And now we're at a place where, we get a couple hundred people signing up to our website every month, which is great. And it's very complimentary from some of our other sites that we do lead generation. So right now, the big thing is there's several of us that are able to help people that come in off the podcast, and it just works.
Definitely, man. There's a couple of key points that I wanted to touch on. There's the fact that you know, even just with the podcast in general, in terms of the roots of it, I think it's cool because, you know, we use Gary Vaynerchuk for reference because it's probably one of the names that many people know most, is the fact that, you know, he preaches, you know, from his notion of jab, 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 right hook, of providing value. And I find that, you know, especially in the real estate business, there's so many people that are specifically focused on boasting about themselves and why they're the best and, you know, why they'd be the best person to work with. And, you know, they lose sight of what you guys are doing, which is the best way to generate business, which is providing value. And once you provide enough value, they will come to you, because not only have you given them something first, but they've built that trust, which in turn leads into the next thing that I like that you know, preach, is community, right? You know, that's one of the biggest things that helps build a brand and helps build a sphere that's dedicated and devoted to you, is when you can build a community of people that preach what you're doing, they find value in what you're saying, and ultimately, you know, they become repeat listeners or customers or clients or whatever that is, by harnessing that community aspect.
Totally. No, I couldn't agree more. And I mean, I think the biggest thing about anybody who's an entrepreneur, especially in real estate, is being authentic, right? Being on brand. And I mean, we're the same people on the podcast that we are in real life.
Yeah.
We're very much relaxed, and we like to joke and have a good time. And in reality, we're hungry to learn ourselves. I mean, I think that's the best thing about, I don't know if it's a personality trait, but if you're curious and you're hungry and you want to learn, and you know, and you want to share that with people, that's what you should be doing. I mean, it's a perfect fit. So I mean, we're trying to learn with people as we go through. And I mean, real estate there's so many layers to it, right? There's so many layers to business that you just got to be a lifelong learner, and you have to be willing to seek out the education and share it with others. So I think that's a good point.
Well, certainly. And, you know, it's cool the fact that you kind of alluded to earlier, how when you got started, you had to reach out to people and you had to be patient and persistent about it to get some of these people on. Because for those looking to start a podcast, even outside of the real estate space, that's one of the things you have to do to get the ball rolling. And it's exactly what I did. You know, I was DMing people on Instagram that had 80 to 200,000 followers that I had no business talking to. But, you know, after having a warm conversation and carrying out that in the best way. But, you know, some people, it took me 2 months to get on the show after emailing them weekly, being like, yo, man, people want you on, like, get your ass over here and let's do this. And, you know, they admire. I had a guy message me the other day, and we recorded our podcast a couple of days ago, or a video series. And, you know, that's exactly what he said. He entered it with his starting line was, hey, Mike, thank you so much for the patience and persistence. Let's do it. And, you know, it took me exactly 7 emails on a weekly basis to get this guy on. And we had an amazing chat. And now we're actually looking at starting a business venture in the marketing agency together. So, you know, it's cool. And that almost transitions into the next thing I wanted to touch on, is the fact that I find we learn so much, and you can probably attest to this. I learn more than ever by having these 1-hour conversations with specialists in different industries, and, you know, picking brains of the masters, and, you know, shedding light on stuff that I never even thought about. So it's such a neat tool to not only build relationships, but also learn yourself.
Well, you know, and I used to, in grad studies, I used to teach undergraduate courses. And, you know, I think back to that, and that was the first time in my life that I realized that through teaching, you learn. And that's what this is really. I mean, when you're doing a podcast, you have to know the information that you're dealing with. You have to develop questions. And I mean, from that conversation, you're gaining so much. So in a lot of ways, it's a selfish pursuit, because, you know, 142 episodes deep, where we are currently, I mean, I just know so much more about real estate now, right? Because I've been able to kind of speak to just phenomenal people that are in the industry all over, right? From politicians to economists to developers, you know, celebrities, and the list goes on, right? And how they're perceiving the market, how they're working within the market. And it's just so powerful for us, as well as just gaining that access and that information. So I agree.
Yeah, man. One of the things I love what you do, Adam, with your podcast is the fact that, you know, you just went into it there. The fact that you you bring on people from a vast array of industries in the sense of the politicians and people from different stuff that people might not necessarily relate directly or correlate with real estate, but it does influence, similar to what I'm trying to do with my video series is, bringing on a rap artist that has a #1 hit. Some of the entrepreneurial aspect that goes into that can be translated across to real estate, similar to a politician and his views on the economy is a future pacing forecast for real estate. So I think it's cool that when people, and I'll link it all below, but when people go check out your podcast, it's nice that you don't just talk about, how to invest, how to do this. You dive into all of the external influences that impact real estate as a whole, which is cool because sometimes it's avenues that people might not think about, but those are the avenues that give the listeners a leading edge because it is stuff that the general public might not be thinking about.
Well, it's funny. And I really appreciate that. But I mean, at the end of the day, like we're investors as well, right? So these are the things that we're thinking about, like what direction is the city headed, right? So we want to talk to urban planners that are involved in the city. What are the next up and coming areas? What are the cap rates in certain areas? What are political forces that, headwinds are obviously, there's a lot of changes coming to the Vancouver real estate market. What are the various platforms out there, right? So these are all things that impact how people perceive the market. And it's also how investors like myself make decisions, right? So no, it's a lot of fun doing it. And we thought we were going to run out of topics, which is a crazy idea now because I mean, we're just scratching the surface of what you can talk about when you really think about how much goes into an industry, right?
That's so funny because that was kind of the next thing I wanted to touch on is, not only for yourself, but for anyone that's watching this, that's thinking about doing a video series or a podcast is, a lot of people struggle even with the mentality of just getting started is, you're 100 and some episodes, almost approaching 150. How do you come up with these topics that are engaging, are listenable, are exciting, are relevant, which is a big one, is relevancy. How do you, what's your word of advice to people looking to get started in any avenue of entrepreneurship for finding topics that would be exciting to a consumer or a listener?
Well, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, at the end of the day, we read a lot, so I mean, like I said, I'm constantly on podcasts and listening to podcasts, listening to Audible, gaining ideas and insights into how other people are approaching real estate. In the media, we constantly monitor developing stories and people that are involved in the conversation. Obviously, Twitter is a great resource for that. And then just stuff that we're kind of interested. We meet once a week where we talk about potential guests and people that are kind of doing exciting things that we want to have on the program. We have like our dream list of certain guests that we hope to get over time, and we've actually accomplished getting a few people on the program that we never thought in a million years would come on. So, and we have some exciting people lined up for the future, which is great. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is monitoring the market, coming up with different ideas, and it's a collaborative effort. And then I think when you actually get going and you gain some traction, people start reaching out, and that's been the nicest. We've kind of turned a corner a bit where we now have public relations firms that have gotten in touch with us that are trying to get their clients on the program, which has been a great kind of marriage where they represent developers or people on HGTV or a variety of different shows, and they want to get their clients on the program just for exposure. So those kind of collaborations are great down the road. And I mean, one thing I kind of wish we would have done earlier on was reach out to some of the PR firms in the city, because it's a huge value add to them, right? So I mean, there's a lot of different angles, but just it's putting together a plan and having a system and being consistent. And like you said, I mean, it's following up, because it's not, these people want to be on the program. It's just that they're so bloody busy, right? Like that's the issue, is that everybody's busy, right? You're busy, I'm busy, everybody that we want to have as a guest is busy on the program. So it's lining up the time and not letting it get lost in the fold, right? So
Definitely. I think it's exciting to hear that you talk about stuff that you have passion, but it is sort of trending in your space. And one of the tricks that I use, whether it be topics for this video or topics for my YouTube channel in general, if people are looking to get started, is I kind of use this sneaky tactic where I would just go to whoever my biggest competition that's the most popular on YouTube or on the podcast series. I'd filter their videos by what's most popular in terms of views or listens. And I would just put my own spin on the exact same video, because then people are searching for it. They've vetted the fact that people are interested, and you have a different take on it because you're a different person. So for people getting started, I think there's always opportunities to look at what's already been done and then just put your own flavor on it, because evidently if it's ranking, people are listening and people like it. So go look. It's not stealing. It's just putting your own spin on something that people are excited about and intrigued in. So one thing that I like that you're doing is now it's become organic in terms of people that wanted to join, and even the topics. There's a really neat article, and I'd love to hear your spin on this at some point, but Inman just released an article saying that they did a big study on millennials, and millennials say that they prefer, in terms of real estate, to work with an influencer more than an agent with top results. So we're going through this interesting transition where studies are saying that almost 90% of people, I think it was, are preferring to work with people like yourself that have a brand, have presence on podcasts, have presence on Instagram. They're heavy into social. They would much rather work with someone like that than the older realtor that has done 50, however many deals in a year. He might have a bigger track record, but people are looking now to work with those that are exciting on social. So there's some different industry trends that are evolving that I think are pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I mean, I don't pretend to know the life of influencers, but I at the end of the day, I think it's interesting. Like, I started off my career doing a lot of the tried and tested ways to generate business, open houses and door knocking and flooring kiosk shifts and everything that you can imagine doing, right? Where it's basically you're just standing there waiting for somebody to, just walk by so you can try and engage them about real estate, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but now I think part of the benefit of this kind of exciting era where we can be online and we can be talking to several people. I mean, like I go to sleep, I wake up, and a few thousand people have heard me talk about real estate, right? How many open houses do I have to do to get in front of that many people?
Exactly.
It's just such an obvious, for me, it's just so obvious for where you want to be spending your time in terms of lead generation. And, we've talked about this before, but our online sites right now, I mean, we get about 1,500 leads or so a month signing up on our pre-sale condo site and on the podcast site. And when I started out in real estate, like how on earth would you get in front of that many people without kind of building a system online that allows you to kind of gain this kind of access, right? So I think it's a good point. I kind of come from it from the perspective of just, if you build it and you keep creating and the content keeps getting there and you use the right people to help you grow it, it'll be a success. And the person with with the leads coming in, if you have the problem of just how to service the business, that's a good problem to have.
It's a very good problem, man. And that's something that I'd love to dive into now is, that I have so much admiration for what you've done with these condo sites and stuff. And I think it's, probably the most creative way of generating business in a very organic and non-salesy way. So, as we kind of talked about on the phone previously a couple times, is a lot of realtors fall short in the sense that, now people are getting used to Facebook marketing. Now people are getting used to being directed to a landing page where there's forced registration and they're going to get sucked into another agent's website where they're going to get called and emailed. And, people are getting to the point where that's now old and they're getting frustrated when they have to do that. And I had someone the other day, I couldn't fucking believe it, but I sent them a link to a property because they inquired about it. And I sent them the realtor.ca link, not even my website link. I was like, I don't want you to sign up. And they went on a rant to me about having to sign up for the realtor.ca terms of service. And I'm like,
Right.
this is a public website. You're not going to get a call from anyone. And they're like, I'm not signing up, blah, blah, blah. Like, why are you sending me? Just send me the pictures. And I'm like, oh my God, this is too much. So, let's talk to people about what you've done with the new condos, because I think that's amazing. And I think it's only going to become more impactful as time goes on and as that becomes the new way of giving back and providing value.
Well, it was really, I mean, we've been working on my business partner, Mike, and he started actually he started actually blogging on new construction on his personal site a long time ago. And it started generating leads and people getting in touch. And we just decided to take a more corporate approach where we branded it so that it was more that anyone could reach out. It wasn't the kind of the ego-driven sites that you see where it's based around one realtor and a massive team. We wanted to have more of a democratic approach where we could bring agents in and everybody could operate under one umbrella. And we built a site, Vancouver New Condos, that has been super powerful. And Mike, my business partner, we complement each other very well because he's like the mad scientist SEO guy who's like constantly just looking at numbers and figuring out kind of the next way to kind of get the site ranking and everything else. And I'm more so kind of training and content creation, but we've had a great ride with that site. Yeah, it's been very good in the sense that it's not, at the end of the day, we're putting out good information, I think. And when you say non-salesy, I guess the biggest thing is, yeah, we're trying to educate people. We're not doing gated content. And we're getting a lot of education-based marketing out there. And what we find is that when people start realizing how much value you're adding to their experience, then they start to say, you know what, I want to sign up. I want to be on this guy's email list, or I want to get these updates. I see real value. And then the other best thing about it is by the time you start working with them, they already feel like they know who you are.
Yeah.
Which is great, right? Because you've actually added value to their life, and you've built that trust beforehand. So it just makes the transition into working with these people a lot easier as well. So I mean, that's been the nice thing about both sites, really.
Definitely. I think it's cool that you touch on that, and the fact that, whether it be podcasting or value add sites or blogging or social media, when you do build a persona on there and you do provide enough value or enough transparency to whatever you're doing, people do feel like they know you. So when you meet them for the first time, it's no longer a sales pitch, it's more of a consultation, because they've already made up their mind in the sense that they would like to work with you because they've reached out and they've made the decision internally. It's no longer you cold calling them and saying, trying to put your best pitch on and do your elevator spiel and why you're better than everyone else and trying to, make that connection. They've already vetted the fact that they like what you're doing. But in turn too, it also weeds out the people that might not be a good fit, because if they don't like it on whatever platform, then they might not be the best clients to work with either. So, I think It's exciting in the fact that, you're taking that approach that everyone's preaching on now, is documenting and giving value in a sense that over time, you're just providing stories and content so much that people want to know more.
And just to add to that, I think, being authentic and being who you truly are is the big thing, because you're right. If somebody watches this video and says, you know what, Mike or Adam is not the right fit for me, that's good. That's called qualifying. Like
Exactly.
You're basically weeding out people that it's not the right fit. There's a lot of people out there that are gonna relate to your personality and your approach. And I learned early on in this business that I'm not very slick. I'm not the dapper luxury agent, perhaps. I don't share your interest in cars, although I appreciate your interest in cars. But I mean, I can only be who I am, right? nerdy or jokey or whatever it is, that's who I want to be. And that tends to be the people you'll connect with people regardless, right?
Definitely. So, I think that's kind of a neat segue into something that's been on my mind too throughout this chat, is the fact that, don't get it twisted for the audience, in the sense that, you've got Canada's #1 real estate podcast, you've got some cool websites, but you're also a top producing realtor. So for people listening, you're actually, despite doing some creative stuff, you're still throwing up big numbers, and you're still creating a sustainable business that, as you've proved from time and time again, is, market proof, and it's able to stand the test of time, in the sense that regardless of where the Vancouver market has gone and is going, you've built a very strong business through these avenues, in the sense that it's allowing you to still be a top producer. And I think it's exciting that, you're a strong agent, but by also having these other organic avenues that are always going to be interesting and relevant, it'll help flow those leads even when things go down and might hit a bottom point, when others, just have the agent, they just have Adam the agent. When the economy goes down, they might struggle because they have to go cold call again. They have to go door knock again. But you've built your business at a very, technological advanced way, such that you have leads coming organically from so many different angles, that regardless if Vancouver continues to go down, or, hits a low point, you're sustainable.
Yeah, and I think there's so many different ways to do it in real estate, and I think that this is going to be an interesting time. We've had a huge growth in the amount of new agents that have entered the business in the last couple of years. I mean, we've been growing exponentially, and I'm very happy that I've been able to do this for the past almost decade successfully, and kind of build a core business, because I think that we are going into a time where it's going to be tough for new agents, and as we know in this business, it's feast or famine, and we've just had a phenomenal run here. So I think you're right. I think diversifying and making sure that you have leverage in a tough market and a market share is huge. It's everything, right? If you're going to actually stand the test of time. And, I feel like I started, everyone feels like they started in not a great market. When I started in 2011, 2012, I know you can relate, Mike. When I started, the market was not great at all, right? It was kind of, I was really, really concerned. And I remember my first year thinking, like, of course the market's shifting. Like, I started, right? Like, and that's how a lot of people feel, like it's just my luck, right? And then of course we had two kind of soft years, and then the market exploded. So you never know really what's around the corner. But it's the ability to kind of hang in there and build systems. And when markets do soften out, my biggest thing is, this is the time to work on your business and build the infrastructure that's going to take you to the next level when the market shoots up, right? The next run. Because if you have that infrastructure in place, like, I just think about now, like, if we had the infrastructure that we have now in place in 2012, we would have done probably 3 times the amount of business that we did, right? And I mean, we were still, in our referral network last year did 329 deals. Like, that's almost a deal a day. And
crazy.
we would have doubled that production at least, had we had this infrastructure in place. So, run with low costs and build something creative, and look for the gaps in the market to develop yourself and your brand. And when the market comes back, there's a good chance you'll explode, right?
Yeah, man, that has to be one of the most, one of my favorite things that you've said on this chat so far. And it really resonates with me because, as you know, man, there's no covering up the fact that the housing market right now is shit, right? We've got 10 months of inventory. It's a good time for acquisition and buyers and investors, but for people looking to sell or trade and do, emotional real estate decisions, it's a very tough time. And you have a lot of agents that maybe got in during the boom, or they're just getting started, and their mentality is this: woe is me, the market sucks, I don't know what to do, they're struggling. But what, applying what you just said to that, and this is what I tell them too, is, if you have more time than usual than if you were in a booming market, this is the time to double down on the things that you otherwise might not have time to do, like get your ass on social media, build your personal brand, learn how to, revamp your CRM and reach out to your sphere and add value in a different way that can, build more referrals. Like, double down on stuff that you might not otherwise have time to, so that, when everyone else is jumping ship because of the market, you're in the background building up this sustainable, rigid business, so that when it does come back, whenever that might be, you're the one that has built this resilient business that trumps everyone else, because you're way ahead on social, you're way ahead on marketing. You've been working in the background and grinding in silence, compared to the others that are just walling away in their sorrows, asking, when's it going to come back up?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's a couple of things for agents that are new to the industry. I mean, one is you have to have that kind of relentless, positive approach to real estate. You have to be positive. You have to be the person that's willing to kind of turn over all stones and see where the business is, right? That's the one thing. If you're negative, you're in the wrong space for sure. And then two, I think what's interesting is, big agents have a lot of money to spend, but not a lot of time. And new agents have a lot of time, but not a lot of money, right? So I think there's that element where, if you have time as a new agent, you should be learning everything that you can possibly learn, and you should be doing stuff like content. And I always liken it to kind of, when you look at big agents, like they're not door knocking, they're not doing these, they're not hanging out at open houses necessarily. They have somebody else typically doing their open houses. So there are still opportunities to win, where you don't have to necessarily go toe to toe with somebody who has a much larger budget for marketing than you do. But there are ways to get a market share, that just by being creative and spending time instead of money, right? So that's another thing that I think is worth considering if you are starting your business now.
Definitely. Sure. I think that's imperative for new agents to, really jot some notes down on, in the sense that, a lot of people ask me what to do, and I made a video about overcoming the objection of being a new or a young realtor. And there's so many ways that you can go up against one of those Goliaths that are a big agent with the big marketing budget, and, demonstrate the fact that to a newer or younger agent, you're not just a number, you're a client that's going to get service. So there's better communication. You're not too busy, so you can service better. You can put more attention to it. You can outmarket them in creative ways, because they're too busy spending it on their bunches and their billboards. You can door knock and do a super open house. You can build a presence on social media. And similar to me, I don't have a huge budget for marketing compared to some of the people spending $100,000 a month. But because, even relating to this Inman market, Inman story about people wanting to work with influencers, I have a steady flow of leads of people that relate to me from social media. So I doubled down on what I can do and what I can afford. And that has helped me in my ways. So, I think that's very good advice, as you said, for new agents, is there's always competitive advantages that you can demonstrate compared to the people that are big. You don't have to look at it as, something that's impossible.
No, absolutely. I agree 100%.
So here's one thing that I want to get into before we slowly wrap up here, is future projections, because real estate is going in a really interesting direction, in the sense that there's different influences coming here in Canada, where cannabis was legalized. There's also new things happening where Zillow's entering Canada, and a lot of realtors don't know how to take that. What happens, even on my post today on Instagram, is what happens if the time comes and Amazon buys Zillow and they're able to outservice the average agents, and the majority of agents become obsolete. Where do you think real estate's heading, and what do you think agents should do to prepare for the future and build the resilient business?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and I feel like since I started in this business, people have been talking about, the industry being disrupted, and I mean, in a lot of ways, it already has, right? I mean, in a lot of cases, by the time somebody goes into an open house, they've already been communicating with the agent who they've connected with online, or who they've signed up for a site, or they've already had a phone call from somebody prior to getting to that open house and have developed a relationship. So a lot of the old school tactics already do not work anymore, right? And I do think it's just a matter of time before, obviously Zillow is now coming to Canada. Amazon is the most terrifying in terms of lead gen, I think, because obviously they would have a massive impact on how people start to search for agents. But I think there's ways to stay relevant, and I mean, we're expanding geographically. We're moving outside of Vancouver, and we're getting into video. We're building community. We're building better resources. We're doing seminars, webinars, and it comes down to again, I think, just connecting with people, building a tribe, and people really appreciating what your message is and what your advice and what your information is. Because at the end of the day, if I have the choice of, personally as a consumer, if I have the choice of going to Amazon and getting matched with an agent based on reviews or this or that, versus somebody that I've been maybe listening to their podcast or watching their webinar, and they've taught me a ton about real estate, and I know and I trust this person, I'm going to choose the latter every time. And it's really just comes down to, I think we are moving into this more of an education-based role, and I guess you could say, quote unquote, influencer role in real estate, where you have to be engaging people in an online space and providing meaningful content. And I think that's really the direction where this industry is going. And I think it's also going to be how great agents stay at the top of their game and continue to have a market share moving forward, for sure.
Definitely, man. I think it's exciting that you went down that road with your answer, in the sense that, a lot of people ask me where the value is in real estate agents, because some people just don't know. And, the way I usually answer that is, or how to be a good agent is, back in the 80s, 90s, whatever, realtors were essentially gatekeepers of information. You needed us to get access to that house, to see the photos, to get, we were 100% required, because we were a critical piece in getting into a home. But now that, everything's online, we need to find ways to provide value in a different manner. We're not just
Right.
the MLS feed. People can see that. So how are we providing value? And I think, you hit the nail on the head there, in the sense that, going forward, you just need to find creative ways to build relationships and community while providing value in an organic and creative way. And that will stand the test of time, because, as you're proving right now, as things evolve and as new social platforms come into the picture, as long as you stay relevant and find a way to leverage that platform, whatever's new and trending, to provide value in a good way, you will always be desired by the customer, and you will always be seen as an authority in the space, because you're putting out relevant content on relevant platforms.
No, absolutely. And I mean, at the end of the day, we have to remember here, this is, for most people, buying real estate, it's the biggest purchase that they'll ever make in their life, right? And it's really important to have somebody that you trust, guiding you through the process, making sure that you're making a good investment. And with prices, especially in Vancouver, I mean, like, people often say, well, I don't really care about the investment side of it. Well, no, like, when you're spending over $1 million, like almost on a condo, like, 700,000-800,000 on a 1-bed condo, whether you want to see it as an investment or not, it is an investment. So
Yeah.
you need to think about it like an investment, and you have to think about, you need the right guidance, right? That's at the core of it. And I think, I don't think realtors are really going anywhere. I just think the role that realtors play will probably morph to some extent,
Yeah.
and the way that people connect to agents will morph as well. But the value add that agents bring to the table, I don't think it's going anywhere personally.
Big time. I couldn't agree more, man. I think you nailed that one. And, before we wrap up here, something I'd like to ask and ask everyone is, what's your most recommended book for anyone watching this podcast, potentially specific to realtors or in general? And then, last words of advice, what can we expect from you going forward for all those who are going to start following your journey now?
Yeah, I mean, great question. We always ask on the podcast, questions similar. The question that can get you something that you can go out and do immediately that's actionable. And books are great. I think, like I said, I mean, now that I finally got Audible like about six months ago, and I'm going through about a book every 2 weeks right now, which is not too aggressive, but when do we find an opportunity to sit down and actually open a book these days, right? So the fact that I can read, 25 books a year or so, I'm pleased with that. One book I read recently that had a huge impact on me, and I've been meaning to read it for years, is The One Thing by Gary Keller. Now, Gary Keller, most people know him from The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which I think is, if you're a new agent, you got to develop systems early on in your business. So that book has been phenomenal in terms of, I mean, that's what every new agent needs to read that book, in my opinion, to just understand what systems are and so that they can implement the back end. But the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller, is phenomenal because I think as entrepreneurs, we have a lot of ideas and you get excited about a lot of different things. And sometimes it's not very useful to be going in 9 or 10 different directions at all time. And I'm that way totally. Like I bite off more than I can chew all the time, and I always have 6 or 7 things on the go. And I know you're the same way. We're similar that way, Mike, I think. But the reality is that the one thing kind of just draws you back and allows you to kind of harness that energy for one goal, one powerful goal that's going to take you to the next level. So I think that's been a book that's been hugely influential on me, and I know a lot of guys in my industry who are at kind of the top of their game. That's kind of the Bible for them as well in a lot of ways. So that's to answer your first question. And then your second question about kind of where we're going and what's coming up for us again is we're expanding geographically. We want to go nationwide, and that's a big thing coming up for us. Is we've been kind of focused in the Vancouver market. Now we're kind of focusing all around BC. We've done some stuff in Alberta, but we're going to kind of continue to push east. We're also building a lot more resources and community around the site. So really exciting things happening for our website, our mailing list, seminars, webinars. And so basically just getting in front of more people, providing more resources, providing the best information we can about the Canadian real estate market in general, and content. Really, that's what we're super excited about, is building content. And I think that's the direction we're heading. So I'm excited.
That's awesome, man. It's such a good book choice too, because, as you said, we're both in that way, in the sense that I've always felt the man who chases 2 rabbits catches none. And, at the end of the day, when you can channel your energy towards one thing that you're passionate about, you can be so much more effective and you can scale so much quicker. If you're trying to do 100 things and be just mediocre at it. So that's awesome, man.
And time blocking is everything now. And it's so hard to do as an agent. I mean,
I know.
It's so hard to do as a business owner, right? Just in general. But this idea that your phone, you don't respond to every text, don't respond to every email immediately, like block periods of time to deal with stuff, and you will be so much more productive. And forget multitasking.
True that, man. I couldn't agree more. That's for new agents listening, that's one of the best pieces of advice ever, because as soon as you start going down the rabbit hole of answering messages as soon as they come in, or scrolling through social media to see what's happening today, you're done, and your productivity is going to go down the tube. So that's awesome, man. And For everyone listening, I think this is amazing story about being relevant and finding creative ways in your space to leverage in order to be a top producer or at the top of the game, and doing things that are relevant to you, because at the end of the day, for Adam, tech is very much in his blood, and being creative in his space. But it's just about finding something that's resembles you, because success to everyone looks completely different. So whether it might not be a podcast, but find out what's exciting for you and then double down on that, especially in this time as social content and content in general becomes the name of the game in every industry. So I think that's amazing, man. Adam, I'm going to link all those books below, and I'm going to link his websites below, because I really want you guys to check out what he's done, as well as with the podcast, because I have no doubt, and even I'm doing this, taking notes and finding ways for you to apply that creatively in your own space. So Adam, man, I can't thank you enough again. And I think this has been an awesome chat for everyone listening.
No, I appreciate it, Mike, and keep doing what you're doing. I know you're creating a lot of great content, and I'm a fan. Like I said, I'll be watching.
Thanks so much, man. So again, guys, please comment your biggest lesson learned, as always, below, especially if it's an idea that you guys have for content creation going forward. And if you want our opinion, I'll respond to everything commented below. So again, thank you all so much for tuning in, especially those that made it to the end. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Cheers.